The twin suns of Arcturus, 9 bled crimson across the horizon, casting long shadows over the jagged cityscape of Kael'thar Prime. The once proud metropolis now lay in ruin, its towers fractured, its streets littered with the remains of the Valor clan, my clan. I stood atop the highest terrace of what had been the council's spire, my gauntlet hand gripping a blade that hummed faintly, like a trapped star. Across from me, he waited. Nirik Sile, the emissary of the Kryn Dominion, knelt, palm extended, a mocking smile stretching across his scarred face. He wasn't tall, perhaps an advantage for what I had to do, but his presence carried the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. I breathed in the acrid air, tasting the smoke, the ash, and the metallic tang of blood. This day had been coming for centuries. "You think this is some sort of duel?" he said, his voice silky, yet lined with menace. "You're alone. Your clan is nothing without me controlling the orbitals above your city." I didn't answer. My grip tightened on my blade. Its hilt pulsed, responding to something deep within me, some ancient memory coded in my bloodline. My ancestors whispered through the vibrations, the same whispers that had guided every strike, every defense, every moment of survival for the Valor. Nirik's smirk widened. "Strike if you dare. Let's see what a weakling can do." I stepped forward. My boots crunched over shattered crystal tiles as I closed the distance. For a moment, it seemed as if the suns themselves paused, waiting. Then instinct overtook thought. I struck his palm. The impact reverberated up my arm like lightning, but it wasn't just force, it was awakening. The blade in my hand ignited in a searing blue plasma, the energy so pure and violent that the air around it shimmered. Sparks arced into the ground, burning footprints into the terrace. Nirik recoiled, but it was too late. The ignition of my blade resonated through Kael'thar Prime. The orbital shields above the city, once controlled by the Dominion, flickered and failed. In that instant, the forces that had surrounded my clan vanished, or were destroyed. My ancestors' whispers had carried a warning, a secret embedded in the blood of every Valor. When the blade burns with the sky's fire, no chain shall bind you. I raised my blade, its energy thrumming, and felt my heart synchronize with the rhythm of the city's dying pulse. "Your clan is gone," Nirik hissed, finally rising to his full height. "You cannot win." I smiled, not for triumph, but for clarity. "No, Nirik, you never understood us." And then I moved. The middle of Kael'thar Prime was chaos. Fractured buildings erupted in flame as I cut through squads of Dominion soldiers, each swing of my blade sending shockwaves that crumpled armor and shattered exoskeletons. I wasn't just fighting soldiers. I was channeling generations of strategy, the Valor code etched into every fiber of my being. Nirik's forces were formidable. They had plasma rifles, gravity traps, and drones that tore through steel as if it were paper. But they were not prepared for the precision of a Valor warrior awakened. I pivoted over a burning barricade, spinning my blade in an arc that sent a squad of attackers tumbling off the edge of the terrace. Sparks from my weapon ignited the remains of a collapsed wall, turning the battlefield into a storm of fire and metal. Yet even as I fought, I knew the truth. The heart of this battle was not in the streets. It was here, on this terrace, between Nirik and me. Every enemy I cut down was a shadow, a prelude to the confrontation that would decide the fate of my world. And then I saw him. Nirik moved with an unnatural grace, almost as if he could predict every move I made before I made it. Plasma arcs flared around his wrist guards, deflecting strikes that would have felled an ordinary warrior. "You're strong," he said, dodging a swing that could have severed his arm. "I'll give you that. But strength without control is chaos. and chaos dies. I laughed, a bitter, rasping sound. You don't understand control. You never did. Control is not domination. Control is balance. And balance is what you will never have. He lunged. Our blades clashed, sparks raining in a cascading blue-white storm. Each strike reverberated through the terrace, shaking loose debris from the ruins. His movements were precise, but mine were guided by the lineage of my clan, by centuries of inherited instinct. I struck his left arm again. The plasma ignited further, enveloping the terrace in blinding light. Niruk cried out as the energy surged through him, and I realized the truth. He had underestimated the Valor Code. He thought it was merely skill, it was legacy. And then the air above us split. The orbital shields, once a tool of the Dominion, had been repurposed by my blade's resonance. Satellites, once poised to annihilate Kael'thar Prime, erupted into orbiting firestorms. Energy arcs rained down across the city, collapsing enemy formations in waves. Soldiers screamed and ran, their formations dissolving in panic. I turned to face Niruk. His face was pale, his smirk gone, replaced by pure calculation. You've disrupted everything, he said. But you still cannot win. I can rebuild. I will rebuild. You can rebuild cities, I said, breathing heavily, my blade still thrumming. But you can't rebuild souls. You can't rebuild bloodlines. I lunged one last time, striking his chest, not just with my blade, but with every ounce of inherited fire from my ancestors. The energy of the blade penetrated his armor, igniting in a final burst of plasma that sent Niruk flying back into the shattered wall of the council spire. The terrace shook, the suns flared, and then silence. The aftermath was devastation. Kael'thar Prime was scarred, smoldering, and silent, but for the first time in decades, it was free. The Dominion forces that hadn't been destroyed had fled or surrendered, leaderless. The orbital weapons no longer obeyed their masters. I knelt among the rubble, the glow of my blade dimming as I did. The whispers of my ancestors faded into quiet pride. The weight of command settled onto my shoulders, not as vengeance, but as responsibility. I thought of my clan, of every life lost that day. Their sacrifice had forged the weapon I had become. Their memory fueled me, and though they were gone, their legacy would endure. A faint noise caught my attention, a survivor, crawling from the ruins. A child, no older than 10, holding a makeshift weapon, eyes wide with fear. I lower my blade. You're safe, I said, kneeling. I will protect what remains. The child looked at me, recognition dawning. You're the last of the Valor? I nodded. For now. But we will rebuild. And next time, our enemies will know. We are not so easily extinguished. Weeks later, the city began to heal. I walked through the streets of Kael'thar Prime, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian. Survivors gathered, forming councils and communities. The child I had saved became my apprentice, learning the ways of the Valor, not to strike out in vengeance, but to defend, to honor, and to preserve. The blade, now resting in the halls of the council spire, continued to hum faintly. It had been more than a weapon, it had been a symbol that even in the face of annihilation, the spirit of humanity and its allies could endure. And I remembered the moment it all began. The strike to Niruk's palm, the ignition of the blade, and the fall of the Dominion forces. It was the moment my clan's spirit passed through me, a moment where the weak were revealed to be unbreakable. Legends spread across the stars of Kael'thar Prime's last survivor. They whispered of the warrior who alone stood against a dominion that had crushed worlds. They spoke of a blade that burned brighter than suns and of a lineage that could not be destroyed. And I understood that history would remember not the destruction of my clan, but the resurgence of our spirit. For the Veiler, the fight had never truly ended. It had only begun anew. The twin suns set once more, crimson giving way to violet twilight. From the highest tower, I watched over the city, blade at my side. The fires of battle had faded, but the embers of hope burned brighter than ever. I raised my hand to the sky. "We endure," I whispered. "Always." And somewhere, across the void of space, the whispers of the Veiler bloodline answered, carrying the promise of a future forged in fire, plasma, and unyielding courage. The twin suns had set, leaving Kael'thar Prime bathed in violet and shadow. The city was scarred, but alive. From the highest tower of the council spire, I surveyed the ruins below, feeling the weight of every life lost and every soul that survived. The whispers of the Veiler bloodline lingered in my mind, like an echo carried on the wind. Strength is not in domination. It is in endurance. I knelt among the rubble where Nirexile had fallen, the scarred handprint on his chest still glowing faintly from my blade's final strike. He had survived, barely, but even if he recovered, he would never again command the forces that had enslaved my clan. The orbital satellites, once the Dominion's instruments of annihilation, now floated powerless above the city, their systems overridden by the resonance of the Veiler blade. In the weeks that followed, the survivors began to rebuild. Families returned to what remained of their homes, clearing rubble, tending fires, and planting crops in the shattered soil. The child I had saved, Leora, walked at my side, wide-eyed but eager, learning the ways of the Veiler. I trained her in patience, in precision, in honor, and in courage. "A blade is nothing without purpose," I told her, "but purpose without courage is even less." Word of Kael'thar Prime's last warrior spread across the stars. Ships came, not as invaders, but as emissaries. Humans, Cytherians, and even exiles from Dominion-held systems sought audience, bringing messages of hope, offers of alliance, and tales of worlds oppressed that had watched and waited. I stood on the terrace one evening as Leora practiced with a training blade, the hum of energy faintly echoing the blade I had used to ignite our freedom. "One day, you'll strike with fire like that," I said, voice soft, almost reverent. She paused, looking at me. "Will it hurt?" she asked. "Only those who deserve it," I replied. "And even then, only when you must. Remember, Leora, true strength is protecting, not destroying. Power without restraint destroys itself." Beyond the city, the stars were alive with possibility. Former Dominion systems were in disarray, their fleets scattered, their leaders uncertain. I had no illusions. They would return, as conquerors always do. But humanity and its allies were different. We endured. We adapted. We fought, not just with weapons, but with strategy, ingenuity, and unity. I thought of my clan again, the Veiler who had fallen in the streets, who had given their lives to ensure that their lineage survived through me. Their legacy was no longer in numbers or domination, but in every survivor, every act of courage, every spark of defiance against tyranny. The Veiler blade remained at my side, its plasma light now calm, simmering with the promise of vigilance rather than war. It had become more than a weapon. It was a symbol, a beacon for those who would rise when oppression threatened. And perhaps most importantly, it had shown the galaxy that even the smallest human, or the last of a clan, could shift the balance of entire worlds. The child, Leora, looked up at me as the twin moons of Arcturus, 9 rose in tandem. "Will we ever be ready?" she asked. I smiled. "We are always ready." not because we are perfect, but because we endure. We rebuild. And when the time comes, we rise stronger than before. A soft wind blew across the terrace, carrying the faint scent of ash, metal, and hope. I raised my hand toward the horizon, toward the orbiting remnants of Dominion satellites, toward the stars that had watched us suffer and survive. We endure, I whispered. Always. Somewhere in the cosmos, across systems and light years of empty space, the whisper of the Valor bloodline answered. It was a promise, not just a survival, but of a resurgence, that humanity and those who stood with it would never bow to tyranny, and that every strike, every spark, every act of courage would be remembered across generations. As the night settled over Kael'thar Prime, I knew the story of our clan would not end in defeat. Our flame had ignited, and from it, hope would spread to the darkest corners of the galaxy. I turned back toward Leora, who mimicked the stance I had once taken against Nirek. Her small blade hummed faintly, but in her eyes burned the same fire that had ignited my own. In that moment, I understood fully. The Valor were gone, but not defeated. Our clan lived on, not in numbers, but in spirit, in courage, and in the unyielding determination to strike against tyranny wherever it rose. And when the Dominion returned, as they surely would, they would find a galaxy ready. They would find that even the last of a fallen clan could light the way, and that light would never be extinguished. The twin moons rose higher, casting silver across the fractured city. My blade pulsed gently at my side, a quiet heartbeat echoing the legacy of the Valor. The galaxy had witnessed the fall of a clan, and now it would witness its rise.